Welcome. Welcome, dear friends and colleagues. Is this on? Yes, I guess it's on. Welcome, dear friends and colleagues, to this event organized by the Nordic Council of Ministers and the government of Latvia. My name is Karen Ellemann, and I'm the Secretary General of the Nordic Council of Ministers. And we, the Nordic and the Baltic countries, we have a strong tradition of cooperation. And it is with great pleasure for me to present this fantastic panel of Nordic-Baltic experts in the field of preventing technology-facilitated gender-based violence. The Nordic and Baltic countries are some of the most digitalized in the world, and the digital transformation has, of course, affected our public administration as well as our educational systems. But with significant progress, unfortunately, also comes significant challenges. We have come to learn that there are worrying gender differences in who is safe and who is vulnerable online. And we see that women are subject to more online harassment than men, and that men are more often the perpetrators. We also see that minority status makes you more likely to experience harassment and abuse online. You would think that in the age of endless digital possibilities, we would be able to create safe online communities. So why does gender-based violence and abuse come along? Online gender-based violence threatens not only individuals, but also democratic core values such as gender equality, equal democratic participation, and freedom of speech. What are the solutions and who is responsible? These are some of the questions that this fantastic panel of qualified experts from the Nordic and the Baltic region will help us answer during this next hour and 15 minutes. But before introducing the panel, I have the honor of introducing to you the Norwegian Minister for Culture and for Equality, Mrs. Anette Tretteberg-Sture, who is here to bid us all welcome. So, Anette, please take the floor.
Thank you. Is it on now? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I have to say congratulations on the International Women's Day, and I'm thrilled to be here at the CSW, especially on this day, celebrating and working with feminists from all over the world. I hope all of you find lots of inspiration for your work to promote gender equality and women's rights these days. Being a member of the Nordic Council of Ministers for Gender Equality and LGBTI, I'm pleased to welcome you to this event on technology-facilitated violence and the Abusive Internet, hosted jointly by the Latvian government and the Nordic Council of Ministers. Since 2017, the Nordic Council of Ministers for Gender Equality has a joint framework agreement with the governments of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania on gender equality. And we are excited to be holding this panel with experts both from the Nordic and Baltic region. In the Nordics, we have come a long way towards gender equality, women's and girls' rights, and also LGBTI equality in working life and in family life. Despite this positive development, many in our region experience gender-based violence and harassment, hate speech, and so on. Gendered online hate influences who participates in politics and in the public space. Online hate is therefore a threat to democracy. We must take what's happening online seriously because it has serious consequences, just like physical violence. Online violence is a part of the discrimination, harassment, and violence that women are subjected to also offline. The root causes are the same, the consequences are the same, and women who have experienced online violence very often also have experienced offline violence. With social media, the hatred comes closer as you may experience it in your normally safe space, such as your own home. Online gender-based violence, or technology-facilitated violence, is a problem that the Nordic ministers have worked with for years and will continue to address under the recently adopted roadmap to push back the opposition to gender equality. The Nordic roadmap aims to advance gender equality, women's and girls' rights, and equal rights for LGBTI persons at the international level, with a unified Nordic voice that values diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and that stands up against discrimination. Harassment and online hate speech require efforts not only by the Minister of Gender Equality, of course, and LGBTI, but from other sectors and policy areas. The Nordic Ministers for Culture have established a Nordic think tank that looks into the tech giants' influence on democracy in the Nordic region. The task of this think tank is to advance the debate about the tech giants' influence on democracy in the Nordic region, so that the Nordic region can better deal with the challenges in the future. Through this pan-Nordic effort, the Nordic Ministers for Culture hope to be able to pool knowledge and experience from all the different countries. Another example that I would like to highlight is the Nordic Baltic project, New Ways to Tackle Gender-Based Violence. This project has been successful in forming an international platform to raise awareness, prevent gender-based violence, and to promote the Istanbul Convention. I hope the presentations here today will bring us further in the discussion of solutions and prevention, and to eliminate all forms of gender-based violence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Annette. Thank you very much, Minister. We do indeed have a responsibility to solve this problem. And now we are eager to listening to this Nordic Baltic expert panel. And I will actually let you introduce yourself, of course also with your name, so you don't have to listen too much to me. And just one question that I would like to ask all of you is that what we've just heard, are we winning or losing this battle? Just bear that in mind, and then I would like to give you approximately 3 minutes each. And I'll just start next to me. Is that okay, Iluta? You start. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Iluta Lāce from Latvia. I'm chairperson, director of a civil society organization called Marta Center that works with women human rights on daily basis. We are building an understanding about women human rights culture, and we provide support to women and children that have been victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, including victims of prostitution and pornography. We are providing social services, psychological, legal assistance, developing methods to be efficient in providing support to women, as well as educating stakeholders such as government officials, police, social workers, judges, to help them to understand why women that suffer from violence have difficulties to be vocal and to stand up for their rights. We also work with young people, and we try to involve in our work men to advocate for gender equality and to engage both with political arena and broader society to bring necessary structural changes. And while being in close contact with the victims of violence, we have observed that they have suffered from online sexual harassment, cyber stalking, image-based sexual exploitation, the use of phones, other messaging systems that coerce victims into unwanted sexual acts, and all kind of other things where we see that technologies facilitate violence. We see that adolescents suffer from teen dating violence. They experience all these pornification of public space, sexualized images of women, and in gaming platforms, social media, and being under pressure of dehumanized public images of women and girls having access to pornography. They also develop distorted understanding of a healthy relationship, and we see that they promote, in a way, violent and toxic relationships themselves. I will stop here. As I understand, we will continue.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it forward to you, Kari.
Thank you. My name is Kari Helene Partapuoli. I'm the National Director of Plan International Norway. Plan works with keeping children safe, and protection of children and youth has been at the core of our work since we were established in 1937. So then it's natural for us, when you see that violence also has a new arena like the digital world. So protection of children, protection of youth in the digital arena is really key and core for us. What we see is that there are similarities and there are differences with the violence that especially girls experience online. There are similarities to what happens offline, and there are similarities to what happens online. But what we see is that there is an accelerated amount of violence that the girls are subjected to online. Girls tell us that they more often experience sexual harassment online than offline. So it seems to be a place where this is more accessible, which is worrying to us. What is important, before we'll go into more details in the discussion, but what is important to us is to understand this arena of security and safety for girls. We need knowledge. We need to know the scale of it, how much is happening, what kind of violence and harassment are girls subjected to online, because that's the only way to actually deal with the problem. And you asked us, are we winning or losing the battle? So I would like to say that in the Nordics, we are often very proud, and truly so, of how far we've come with gender equality. But when it comes to violence against women and violence against girls, we are actually not winning the battle offline. Today, it's important to remind ourselves of the women's rights movement all across the Nordic countries, how much they worked with the crisis center movement, how much they worked with combating violence against women. We've done a lot, but we haven't won the battle. So it's a bit naive for us to think that then we will very easily win the battle of digital violence. So, but there are important learnings, important gains, so we need to look at that, but also know that we are not actually the experts that we think we are, and we're not putting enough focus on it. So winning and losing at the same time, probably.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be here today, of all days. My name is Mogensen. I'm an advisor to the Danish tech ambassador of Silicon Valley. I used to have a happy job in gaming, in video game psychology. I was advising on it. I was doing journalism. I was happy. I was privileged. I didn't know we had a problem. Then Gamergate happened in 2014, and I lifted a rock and thought it was an interesting set of data that so many men would congregate online to wage a digital war, turning into a physical war, on women in digital worlds and in technology. And from that, I shied into working in radicalization. So my happy job in gaming turned into an angry job in activism. And today I have, let's call it an ambitious job in diplomacy and technology and politics in Silicon Valley with the Danish government. So I sit here today also as someone who has peered into the abyss of the internet. I've talked to would-be school shooters. I've talked to young men having formulated and planned out how they would kill, how they would maim, how they would attack women. And I sit here as part of an amazing office with direct contact to some of those tech platforms that are misused to wage this war on women. And I sit here as a man. And I admit I do spend too much time on Twitter. It's part of my job. It's also part of my life and my free time. But I've seen too many men saying over the past couple of days that today of all days we need to sit down and shut up. I politely and respectfully decline. On today of all days, we as men need to rise up, stand up, and join this fight, because we're obligated, we're tasked to be part of this discussion, to be part of this war that is waged on not only our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our wives, but to our peers in society. And it's not a fight that we're going to win today, but looking out over this panel, on this audience, this might be the start of a revolution. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very ambitious to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is María Bjarnadóttir. I come from Iceland originally. I'm very pleased to be here. This is both a great day and an inspiring venue. What amazing festival this is, the CSW. It's also very inspiring to see the focus that digital violence against women is getting in this international and important arena. My background is in law. I originally started as a policy and legal advisor for the Icelandic government, made a somewhat unconventional decision and left a steady job to start studying again and did a PhD on the obligations of states to uphold human rights in the online sphere. And at the time, this is 2014, 2015, my thesis was that the state did have an obligation to protect women and their sexual privacy online. This was considered an absurd notion. I applied to 3 programs. I was accepted to all of them, but everyone said, this is a niche topic that no one will be talking about. And I'm very pleased to see that I was right and they were not. Well, it's always good to be right, but you know how it is. So what I currently work at is implementing the changes that have taken place in Iceland recently. So based on my research, I drafted a criminal reform that was passed in the Icelandic parliament with a targeted legislative measure to protect women online, their sexual privacy and their privacy. To follow up these measures, there were set out quite a few extensive policy measures, and I currently work for the National Commissioner for Police in Iceland in leading these efforts. And these include training police officers, these include sending police officers into schools, talking about consent and the importance of safe digital communication between young people. And it also focuses on improving access to support for victims. So what I think is amazing about being here is that we are all talking about the same things, aren't we, at the end of the day? We are talking about how individuals, how groups, and how political leadership can move us forward. And in the discussion about the losing or winning, coming from a country that has a flaky history with national sport, I thought about this as are we winning or are we losing this match? And I think we've scored a little bit less goals than the other team. But I think that we are seeing that the defense is strengthening. We are seeing more prevention and we are seeing more research, but we need to do more of that. And then on the offense, we need to think about policy, strategy and legislative efforts. And in order to win this game, we are going to need politicians leading this effort. And it's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be very fancy, but they have to do it. And I think that if all of us kind of put our strength behind them and help them, I think they will be able to do it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tuija Saresma. I come from Finland, from the University of Jyväskylä, so I'm a researcher. And for me, it's such an honor to be here, and particularly today, on the United Nations International Women's Day. This is something that I would have never thought I would accomplish, so I'm so proud and I feel humble and honored, yes, to be here. So when I first started doing research on hate speech, and that is the topic that I'm researching at the moment, I was the reason I started doing that was that I was attacked online myself, so I have personal experience on that, too much, I would say, because I was teaching gender studies. And I said openly that I am a feminist. And because I was studying the blogs written by anti-feminist men, I tried to demonstrate, and I think I did demonstrate that they are misogynist and racist, and that's intertwined, these ideologies. And back at those days, many people, even some of my feminist colleagues, told me just to let these MRA, men's rights activist men, to be, that their anti-feminism was nothing but a marginal phenomenon that would soon be over. And yeah, little did they know. So at that time, the word anti-gender was not an issue, actually. I don't think I had even heard the word at that time. But today, I must say that gender-based online hate and abuse that is targeted at feminists, politicians, activists, journalists, academics, it is something that we must really, really worry about. And I'll give you an example. I was attacked on Twitter, once again, the day before yesterday, because I tweeted that I was participating in this CSW committee meeting, and I thought that was quite a neutral tone, quite a neutral tweet that I sent. But there was this young man who is a really active tweeter in Finland, and he's also a very staunch conservative and anti-feminist. And he has been targeting me many times before on Twitter as well. So he just developed this commotion out of nowhere and framed me once again as an unprofessional pseudo-researcher who wastes taxpayers' money. And hundreds of his followers joined to denigrate me. And it's still going on. Every time I open Twitter, there are lots of announcements that it's still going on there. And actually, what maybe epitomizes this sort of backlash, pushback even better, is that today, on International Women's Day, the chairperson of a big opposition party in Finland, and she's a woman, by the way, she tweeted, and I quote, "The threat to femininity in today's Finland is not gender inequality or exploitative patriarchy, but woke madness and genderlessness." And the reason that I really continue working with hate speech, studying hate speech still, is that there is a growing network of anti-feminist conservative forces also in Finland, and we must tackle that. And yeah, yes. I'm so glad you agree.
Thank you.
And I suppose that I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that we have a chance, we stand a chance to even fight maybe this battle, but we just have to work together to do that.
Thank you, Tuija. Christian?
Yes, good morning also from me, and wow, I mean this whole panel here, and it's really amazing. So I'm also very honored to be part of this panel, and I thank Nordic Council of Ministers and Latvia to invite me here. My name is Christian Veske, and I'm the Equality Commissioner of Estonia, and I actually am very new in this position. I've been working only 3 weeks there. But before that, I've been working for 10 years in the European Union's Institute for Gender Equality. So I have a long history working with gender equality-related issues and also on violence against women. So while my current office, the Equality Commissioner's Office, does not really investigate gender-based violence cases, we are still talking about it, because anything that has a potential impact on women's possibilities to go to the labor market, or when they are harassed, whether it's online, offline, then it's a duty also for Commissioner, of course, to speak about these things. But I would also like to mention that at the European Institute for Gender Equality, where I was working, I was behind the White Ribbon campaign at the time, and I will maybe talk a little bit later on this as well, what we learned from doing that campaign, which had quite wide reach during that time. But I would very quickly now come to the point on, are we winning or losing this battle? And I think, first of all, I would like to say that I don't think it's really a battle. I don't somehow like this word maybe very much, because I feel that battles have winners and losers. But when we talk about violence, there are no winners. Winners don't exist. Even these people who are perpetrators, they are losers. They also have issues, be it we can frame it as a mental health issue as well. So I would argue that we are there is no winners in this battle. But of course we must continue working on this, and we must understand these whole complexities that the technology facilitated violence has brought to us, the scale of it as well. So I will stop here from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So having listened to this panel, all of them say that they are proud to be here. I can tell you, as a host, I'm extremely proud to have this panel. Wow, what an introduction you made, and you also kept time. So now I would try to moderate this debate. I think a lot of you touch upon very important subjects. And let me start by you, Tuija, because I think Kari touched a little bit upon it, but that how is the online-based gender violence different from the offline, from the physical gender-based violence, and how is it similar? Could you say something about that?
I can try. And I think that the minister also touched on this subject, but I'll try to add something more. So violence hurts, of course. It hurts like literally, physically, but also mentally. And this is also the case with online violence. It's not different in that way. It hurts as well. It can really harm. And often the kind of violence that is gender-based is targeted at the more vulnerable groups. And usually the perpetrators have more power. So there is a real power hierarchy in this violence that is happening. And I would say that they digitally mediated or technologically mediated violence is, you can say it's sort of a new phenomenon, kind of new phenomenon, because of course we didn't have social media back in 20 years, 30 years ago. So that's kind of a new platform, as was mentioned here before. But still, also digitally mediated violence is an integral part of the chain of violence that actually links the most intimate violence, domestic violence, and violent political discussions that I mentioned in my starting words, and also violent societal structures, also physical and ideological and political violence. So there is a continuum, actually, and I would not separate them so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Then I'll turn to you, Iluta, because you are working every day with victims of gender-based violence. And from your perspective, then how does the online gender-based violence connect to other spheres of life?
Sorry. So what we see is that because we live in the culture where actually we tolerate violence, it's everywhere, and technologies facilitate this violence, and opposite, it goes back to the daily lives. For example, like years ago, we did research about how women are portrayed in internet, and what are their images, and how it leads to self-objectification of girls and women, and how actually self-objectification of girls and women leads to sexual exploitation, easier recruitment into prostitution, pornography, and so on. And there was, I remember one quote of the responder of the research that was within prostitution, that she said, I saw from my childhood that if you allow to do some harm to yourself, you can profit from this. And I don't think this is a very healthy way how to look at the things. And at the same time, we also, another organization on sexual reproductive rights did research about access to pornography, and apparently around 70% of respondents, like adolescents, had easy access to pornographic materials. And it was not so that they searched for this. They just did their stuff, what they did in online, and it just appeared in front of their screens, and 9% of them watched pornography regularly, adolescents, and they didn't talk about this to adults or parents, and in many cases even parents probably don't know what's going on with their children. So these kind of things we also see, and what we know about pornography, we know that it's an exploitative system, and we know that currently they see violence, and this violence becomes like a way how they perceive relationship, and then this violence continues further in their daily lives between all other their peers.
Kari, sitting next here, I know that in your global work, I mean, ensuring women's and girls' access to the internet, of course, is crucial in providing access to education and information. But maybe you could also speak on how the online realm is both a place with this huge potential for gender equality, at the same time as being this, I mean, as we are all hearing, this place with huge risk of exploitation.
Yes, thank you. You're right. It is a place where girls need to be present, and where young women just have to be present, because it's an arena for a democracy, and you need digital skills to actually get a job, and you need it in order to do your education. So access is extremely important, and we know that in poor countries there's less access, but also there's the gender divide is very serious. What we've done, going back to also my introduction, you have to understand the problem in order to do something. So what we have done is spoken to tens of thousands of girls across the globe and asked them, what does digital violence look like? What is your daily online reality? And 6 out of 10 tell us that they have experienced digital violence and harassment. That's a huge number. And what it leads to is also echoing some of what the experts here have said, that they put this self-censorship also on themselves and limit their own access and limit their own online use. So that is a democratic problem. And the thing is that, for example, today there will be a lot of activism going on. There will be a lot of fighting for girls' and women's rights today online. I'm sure we're all hashtagging, we're all atting, we're all online today, and so are girls all across the globe. So we need girls to be there to do that fight. But again, also the girls tell us that they see more sexual harassment online than offline. So, and this self-censorship, we need to be able to teach girls to balance that. So this scope is really, of 6 out of 10 is very important. Just to add, girls in the Nordics and in Norway, they report actually more sexual harassment than across the globe. So maybe reporting more, I don't know, speaking out, but extremely serious.
Wow, very high figures, worrying. Christian Veske, at the end, I'll be turning to you because, as you said in your introduction, you are especially focused on how men and boys can be these positive agents of change for gender equality. What are your thoughts when we learn that men are oftentimes the perpetrators of online violence and abuse.
Yeah, so maybe if you allow me to a little bit come back to what was said earlier here, I would also say that one of the differences between this offline and technology-facilitated violence or online violence is that online violence has brought playfulness into violence much more than ever before. And that is, I think, very dangerous thing, because I'm not also talking only about, let's say, gaming industry, but in the different formats, whether it's violent acts, when we talk about sharing somebody's images without their consent, this is made somehow, you know, it's like a play, and that's dangerous. But you're very right in saying that. Of course, men are most of the perpetrators, and they the most of the victims are women. And I was looking at the data that we have available in Estonia. So what I found out is that the typical perpetrator is a man my age, in his 40s, but we also have, of course, the youngest perpetrators that are teenagers, and the oldest ones in their 80s. So it's a life sort of from very early age until very old age as well. And maybe one thing that we learned when we were doing the campaigning, trying to engage more men in standing against violence against women, that it's very difficult because you may sort of end up in a situation where men start to also feel that they are somehow entitled to be invited to these sort of campaigns, and also that they are somehow the saviors. So you want to eliminate the possibility that that would allow this savior phenomena happening. And plus, of course, we also realize that the more you try to involve or engage men directly, you can never be also sure who these men are. We had the instances also that afterwards it came out that these men themselves have been violent. So that is an issue that needs to be taken also into account.
Thank you, Christian. Maria, I will turn right on to you, because your research within the Nordic and the Baltic countries with a high level of digitalization, you told me that it kind of presents like a unique case. I don't know, but why is that? Maybe you can follow up on Christian and unfold that uniqueness, if it is unique.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there are in place some social structures within the Nordic region that make it an area that should be a good place to find solutions to this global issue. Number one, of course, it's an area with amazing access and use of technology. We have generally amazing... Oh, this is my phone. I'm so sorry. My mother will not be pleased, I can tell you. We have amazing access. We have broadband, literally in the most rural areas. So we have a high uptake of the use and all the benefits of technology. We also have a strong tradition for gender equality, for addressing gender equality, for speaking about gender-based violence in a way that isn't done in all regions. And third, there is an openness about the culture, and there is a kind of a democratic, long-standing democratic tradition within these regions. But what I think is one of the things, the big thing that is happening in the Nordic region, which is happening in the rest of the world and everywhere, is that we are being fed by the solutions that are available today. And I'm saying this as in, I don't remember how many people in here ever had a MySpace account. Can I see a raise of hands? Of course you did, but yes, a lot of other people. This is an account, this is a platform that was very popular, and for people in their early 40s, we thought this would define a generation. Half of the room has never heard of it. And I think it's important that we remember that the platforms of today, they aren't necessarily the platforms of the future. And we as consumers and as citizens have to be a little bit aware of what we are doing when we are using technology and when we are using platforms. Of course, we have so many examples of technology being abused. So we have these apps for parents trying to monitor their children that are used for cyberstalking. We have the smart homes that everyone thinks is really nice, but a smart home for women that are victims of domestic abuse is a prison. So we need to understand that the technological advancement, it's not driven on human rights principles and gender equality, it's driven on commercialization and monetization, and that is a fact. And we shouldn't be so surprised when we are using a platform that is built for advertisement for our democratic debate, that it isn't an inherently democratic platform, because it's inherently an advertisement platform. So I think we need to take a personal responsibility, but that will only go so far. So we need political leadership, we need industry partners to take design, to take safety by design seriously, and this needs to include gender-based violence, not only children, because we can all agree that we need to safeguard the children, but we also need to safeguard the women that are victims of violence. And that's sometimes a little bit, we get a little bit shy about that. And I'm sorry, I just go on and on, but this is the last point. So, of course, we can just create new platforms. That's absolutely possible. And the funding that is available for research and for innovation, that can be specifically marked for projects that safeguard women from gender-based violence. Just as we are funneling a lot of funds into going to space, why can't we just funnel a lot of money into ending violence against women? I'll leave you with that.
Christian Mogensen, you're sitting here next to Maria, and I really want you to join in the debate. Of course, comment on whatever Maria and others have been saying, but also you said in your introduction that the whole research you do in the hateful corners of the internet, and then the whole thing you said in your introduction about empathizing with the perpetrators. I think that's an angle we really would like to know something more about. But of course, you can also respond to whatever Maria said. I just want you in the debate.
Sure, and thank you so much. And Maria, thank you so much. It sounds like when I go back to Silicon Valley, there's quite some hours of overtime that we need to do. So thank you for that. I do kind of want to try a new thing. We're sitting in the UN, and I want to quote one of the most important quotes in my line of work, that ignorance breeds fear, and fear breeds hatred. And so it's Yoda from Star Wars. Just to bring it down a bit. But so many of the young men that I've spoken to, I was given a grant from the Nordic Council of Ministries to quantify the angry internet. And we did a report in 2020 called The Angry Internet, where we tried to weigh how many agitators of violence against women can we find in the Nordic countries. And we found 850 on a yearly basis, which is not a lot. We also did not look in the right places because funding is scarce, so we had to look where we could actually get the data. But 850, on the other hand, is 850 too many. But when interviewing them, when talking to them, when addressing them directly, I would be allowed, because I'm a white, average, heterosexual, boring, vanilla kind of man, and I'm kind of good in League of Legends, so we had an in. they were willing to talk to me. And they opened up. And when I was allowed to ask them, tell me why you're angry. And they would say, I would happily tell you why I'm angry. And they would start explaining why they're sad. All of them started by saying, well, I never had any friends. I've always been hurt. My parents didn't love me and no one wanted to play with me when I was a child. And I was like, well, that sounds extremely sad. Yeah, so now I'm angry at women. And it kind of furthered an analysis of men also suffering under toxic masculinity or the patriarchy, or men suffering under other men. And it's not that we're going to be sitting here today to talk about men, but we are an integral part of this equation called equality. And when we have a generation of young men that would rather adopt a bastardized misunderstanding of free speech in order to fight against rather than to fight for, we need to understand where that hurt comes from. And I've spoken to so many young men in high schools and in public schools in Denmark about masculinity, and they all say, when asked to define masculinity, they can give me 100 things that a good man is not. He's not soft, he's not scared, he's not afraid, he's not vegetarian, he's not feminist, he's not this and this and this and that. Being a young man today, because of social media, is a minefield. There are so many things that you can't do. You cannot be yourself. We have, 2 free pop artists that dress out of the heteronormative suit or denim jeans and a black t-shirt. We have Harry Styles, we have Sam Smith, we have all of these men and non-binary idols. And we have 99.9999% of men showing that we're supposed to be men today like we were yesterday. And we're so afraid to be not men, that we eat more meat than we'd like to. We engage in fewer discussions about equality than we want to. Like, we're so afraid of stepping outside of this boundary of men. Men are hurting. Men are leading all of the numbers on suicide, on self-harm, on depression, on anxiety. It's undiagnosed, but they're there. When talking to incels, when I was talking to the manager, the leader of one of the biggest incel forums in the world, he handed me 200 plus corroborated suicide notes from young men saying, I heard so much, so I'm going to kill myself. And they're confirmed. There is a huge overrepresentation of self-harm amongst the young men that also hurt women. So when we do see terrorist attacks, when we do see planning, when we do see all of these things that are abhorrent and are to be understood as terrorism, it stems not from a hatred of others, but more from a hatred of oneself. But we do live in a world where men would rather kill themselves than see a psychologist. Men would rather hurt than say, I hurt. So March 8th is International Women's Day. But equality is about all of us. And if we reduce equality to be a gender issue, to be only a woman's issue, and not a basic human rights issue, we miss the problem. So yes, empathize, ask why, and notice that these young men are engaging as best they can, which is not very well because sexual education is lacking also in the Nordic countries. But they're trying. They're at least in the discussion. Let's engage them. And just to all the men listening online, we do have a day. It's November 19th, and it's always celebrated, and it's always happy, happy day.
So I just wanted to add a little bit to what you said, because it's important insight who the perpetrators online are. But also just to add that, again, it's not that different as sexual gender-based violence going on the offline world as well. Because what the young girls tell us is that the perpetrators are most often someone they know. So that is a boyfriend, a current boyfriend, or a former boyfriend, etc. So that is something that we know quite well from sexual and gender-based violence to be a fact in most of the violence that women go through. So it's also that sort of basic knowledge that we have. And then in addition, you have this coming through quite clearly, I'm sure, online. Something that's completely underfunded is treating violent men. This is I mean, it's desperately underfunded in Norway, for example. And if you take a look globally, it's not even an issue. But I will say, violence against women, yes, it's an issue for men and women, but it is certainly a gender issue. The most successful treatments that reaches out to violent men deals precisely with gender roles. What does it mean to be a man, and why is it connected to violence? That's a key knowledge that we have. We're not using it, and that is really because we don't dare to touch it. So.
Adding to what you said, what we see also from our practice with women victims of violence, victims of prostitution, pornography, domestic violence, that it's also part of the treatment for them to see that there is no impunity for perpetrators, that actually they see that they are kept accountable. So this is an important issue. They can be self-destructive and destructive towards others, but they have to be accountable for their behaviors. But of course, I think I would like to turn to prevention measures and what we as Marta do. We have checked what's going on in Nordic countries. We have checked what's going on in other countries. How do they work with young people? And we have developed our own way, our own methodology for boys and girls, adolescents, where we actually have like a set of conversations where we look at issues. How I feel about my body, what's going on, how I feel about my peers around, parents, school, what's going on in online and offline environment, what is real friendship, what is healthy relationship, what is toxic relationship, what is trafficking, how can you be easily recruited for sexual exploitation, and so on. And these, when we see that those young persons that have participated in these conversation groups, they are changing, and they are more resilient to these hypersexualized spaces, and they are more questioning what's going on. So we see that this knowledge is needed for young people, but we also need, and there are already fantastic tools for parents, for educators, how to talk to young people, how to talk about what they see in internet and abusive internet and so on. But so we have to create this community, coordinated community response to prevent all this.
Thank you so much. A lot of you just made your mark, but Tuija, you just take the floor, and then I will turn to María, because I would also like you maybe, because time is running, and we also would like to open to the audience, but maybe also come into consideration with these very specific suggestions from lawmakers and whatever you have in your bags. Tuija.
Thank you. I just wanted to continue on what Christian was talking about, and actually also what Kari and Iluta were saying. You were kind of talking about the psychological level of the perpetrators and the victims. And that's, of course, there, and it's important, and there are lots of affects and emotions going on, and all the loneliness and that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to kind of raise also the perspective on a more societal level as a cultural studies researcher. And so I was just wanted to tell you about the research that we have done on who are those people who produce hate speech and who are the ones that circulate it. And as you, Christian, said, that there were at least these 850 men doing that. In our research, we also found that there were a couple of hundred key actors that were producing hate speech online. But the problem is that the followers of these scarce people that produce hate speech do circulate the message, and they are echoing it, and they are spreading it. So that is the problem. And I also wanted to say that there is this group of people to whom hate speech as violence and preparedness for violence is kind of a cry for help. They are lonely, they feel bad, they hurt, they need help. But also, it's not just that psychological level, but there are also these producers of hate speech who are really ideologically motivated, and they are the dangerous ones. They are the ones that want to spread a certain harmful ideology, for example, anti-feminism, and that is also what we need to take care of. Thanks.
Could you also just, because I know that you made a point of developing very specific and concrete recommendations to both individuals and lawmakers. What are those? Could you say a little bit about that now, and then I'll give also the floor to Christian V at the end, and Maria. Yes, you.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, as was said here before, we need value-based leadership, and that politicians condemn hate speech. And I'm really happy that this is happening here. And we are here sitting because we do not want to have any more gender-based online violence. We are against that, so that is important. We need to define what kind of speech, what kind of behavior is acceptable online as well as offline. So we need to have regulations also on online behavior. We need to have clearer sets of tools and responsible agencies for example, political candidates and holders of municipal positions, so that they will know how to behave online, really, and not to spread hate speech and so on. And of course, that has been said here many times, but it's obvious, but it's difficult. But we need to have social media platforms, the media big giants, to have responsibility and more accountability of their work. It's not easy because they profit from spreading hate speech, spreading harmful and misinformation and disinformation, but we should have them, hold them accountable. And one central thing is that I think also that this happening today is really a good example of, is that we need increased visibility for the fact that hate speech and online gender-based violence hurt people, and they impact politics, and it's impacting also democracies. So we need to keep on talking about these issues constantly.
Thank you. Christian at the end, and then after Christian, I give it to Maria, and let's see how time is running. Christian.
Okay, thank you. And maybe building on what Tuija was just saying here about the value-based messages and that leadership is needed. I mean, I completely agree with that. But of course, we live in the world that we live in, and we know very well that this sort of value-based leadership is not always happening. And I was just thinking that one of the solutions, or these solutions, if you move to that, is indeed that the problem itself has to be first recognized. It has to be recognized as a serious problem, because as long as there are just some experts speaking about it, it still remains a little bit a fringe issue. And when I'm thinking about like how this problem should be addressed or could be addressed, of course there is the sort of first feeling that so many changes need to be done, and we need to have special programs in the schools and kindergartens and this and that, and this can be overwhelming, I think, to many of the policymakers. I'm saying that these things need to happen, of course, but of course we, from our side, need to be maybe focusing the messages in a narrow way as well. I would like to also, from my side, to say one of the examples how in Estonia we have addressed partly the problem. Since 2011, we have had web constables. So these are police officers that are active online. They are in every county in Estonia, and their task is to be there where people are, so that the people that are confronted with violent behavior online, or they see something, they have immediately the possibility to turn to someone. Because I think time also is an essence. So when we see something happening online, it's very easy to look away, pretend we didn't see that. But if you need to make this step and start to thinking, oh, should I report this to the police, or what should I do now? The time is critical there. If you have the police officer present in online sphere and everybody knows about them, then it's much easier to turn to these people. But I have to say one thing more about this, because that's something I said on Monday as well. This, of course, can only work if there is a trust towards the institution, if there is a trust towards police. Because if there is no trust, people will not turn to police officers, regardless if they're online, offline. It just doesn't work this way. And police themselves have to work very strongly in maintaining the trust or gaining the trust of people. In Estonia, we've been very happy. We have 87% of people say that they trust police, and that is a very, very high number. So I think there's something that for others also to learn. Thank you.
I'll be super quick. I just wanted to say that we are talking in the hate speech discussion, we are talking about a democratic issue. Women that are participating in the online debate and kind of self-censoring and not fully participating means that we don't get all of the ideas to the marketplace of ideas. It means that we don't get everything that we need as a functioning society. But, and at the same time, like was mentioned here with the children that are exposed to violence, is that what we are seeing happening online is a symptom. The gamification of abuse, the commercialization of the female body, the abuse that feminists and women that take up space online are met with, these are all, we see it online, but these are actually offline illnesses. But they are symptoms that come up online. And I just wanted to say that challenging the status quo, it of course has always been very difficult. And the social progress that we have today and enjoy today, it has been won with the personal sacrifices of others before us. And that's very important to keep in mind on a day like this. But one of my, what I do in my free time is that I sit on a committee called the Grevio Committee, which is the monitoring body that monitors the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, the European, what has been called the golden standard on violence against women. And the committee has issued a specific recommendation on forms of digital violence against women with recommendations to states how they can respond to this challenge. And all states can take use of it. They don't have to be bound by the convention. So this is something that could be of use to everyone, not only the European countries.
Thank you so much, Maria. I promised to open for the floor, but I'll just give two short comments from the panel. Kari first, and then afterwards Christian Mogensen, and then I will try to open for a few questions to the panel. Kari.
Yeah, many things to touch upon. Maybe just remind ourselves again that what happens, what again young girls have told us is that online violence often turns to offline violence as well. Young girls who are subjected to online violence are more likely to be subjected also to offline violence. So there are some synergies here that we need to really understand. And in order to understand this, we have to know the nature of the problem. And that includes putting demands on the social media platforms. There needs to be better reporting mechanisms, easier, accessible. And what would be really nice is if they could start publishing what they kind of reports they get, so that we get to really know the nature and the scope of what's going on. Because you need to understand the problem in order to have the right measures to combat it. And just to be clear, girls need to be online and they need to be safe. And we see that the online violence that they're subjected to quite often in the countries where we work and have programs are used as an excuse to keep girls away because they have to be safe. But you have to be online because otherwise you're out of the formal economy, you don't get the right skill sets that you need for good, well-paid jobs, and you don't have a democratic voice. So they need to be online.
it's a point that bears repetition. So yes, like this is very much a question of democratic representation and democratic principles in all. When we talk about platforms, we're also talking about a tool that most of us, I love all of you in my age bracket, grew up with as the marketplace of ideas, the place where you could meet anybody in the world, where you'd be a user, you wouldn't be a gender, you'd be a person before you were a persona. That is not how they're treated today. We see some of these platforms being used as tools for anti-democratic means, not by the platforms themselves, but rather from influencers or bad faith actors making money, grifting, and getting social and political influence from misusing these platforms' democratic principles. Today, there is a good business in peddling fear, in selling misunderstanding of patriarchy and masculinity and all of these things. And we do see the platforms moderating this to the least of acceptable levels. Only when it becomes a bad business plan to harbor hate mongers, fear mongers, we see them deplatformed. As part of the tech embassy in Silicon Valley, as part of the Danish government, that is one of our, it is a principle to get them to uphold the democratic standard of protecting those that participate in the democratic debate. Of course it is. But we must also call on each other. One of the first feminist terms I learned was killjoy, and how that was a thing in the 90s. And being a male feminist in the 2020s, I thought, that's amazing, we're going to steal that. So one of the things I've done so much, and we have done so much on online platforms, is to tell other men, be killjoys. Don't be afraid to kill the mood. Don't be afraid to point out if a joke is not funny. Don't be afraid to point out that actually, no, that is not how we do it on this server, on this platform. We need to police each other as men amongst men, men to boys, and boys to men. Because men are currently, because we have not achieved equality yet, attuned primarily to other men, meaning that we have a responsibility. And I say that with all the love in the world for my gender. We are accountable for what's happening online to ourselves and to women and to non-binaries all over the world and on all of the platforms. So please, men, killjoy, please.
All right. As promised, I will now try and open the floor to a few questions. We only have like 7 minutes left, but please, when the microphone is red, then you have the word, and please maybe address it directly to one of the panelists. So, Mark, with your hands, or wave at me if you have questions. I have one here in a yellow. Here you go.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the discussion. I'm Alison Thulis, a Member of Parliament from Glasgow in the UK, and I had a constituent who was being stalked by a man, and one of the things that he did was to come to her house and play music through her smart speakers into her house. And I wondered if the panel had any thoughts on how to get the police to take these things seriously and to understand better the real threat that women feel as a result of the technology being used against them.
Thank you. I'll just take a few more questions because I think I saw a lot of arms. In the back, yes, you have it there.
Thank you. My name is Stefano Gennarini with the Center for Family and Human Rights, CFAM. I had a question, perhaps to anybody who would like. First, I want to thank very much the panelists who spoke about the threat of pornography and the link between pornography and violence against women. I think it's something that's still very much ignored and not enough addressed. It seems like there's too much money in pornography for people to attack it. I think with regards, though, to the issue of gender-based violence online, there's a question also about who gets to decide what is harmful. We can all agree that there is no free speech protections for harmful content, for content that is not true, for content that is merely smut. But, for example, I would believe, my organization would believe that teaching children that the only solution to their physical or emotional discomfort with being teenagers is to start a drug regimen that will stunt their biological development and then undergo chemical and physical castration. Others would argue that simply me saying this is a form of gender-based violence. So who gets to decide? And then a second question with regards to the sex education. At what point does sex education become an endless, self-perpetuating loop that feeds information that it essentially teaches children to experiment with sexuality, including pornography, sexting, undermining traditional marriage, fidelity, even motherhood, as a form of sexual slavery? Does that not also pose a problem? Thank you.
Thank you. What I will do is, because there are a few more, there's a lot of more questions. What I'll do is I'll take 2 more questions, and then I will make just a quick round, and then you can actually, by free choice, select which of them you want to answer. But I hope you will get around the questions. So please take notes, because you will get 2 more questions from the participators. I have on the floor over here by, yes, you. Exactly. I hope you get the right microphone now.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm Mary Rose Kaczadowski from Women's Intercultural Network. What I'm seeing is there's the profit motive here is indicative. We have corporations, we have multi-billionaires who own horizontal and vertical platforms, and we have banned in some places selling cigarettes to children, some places selling alcohol. So why can't we take a look at the commerce aspect of this? That is huge, and no one is talking about that. It's the big elephant in the room, and if you could address that, that'd be great.
Thank you. And then the final question is here. You have the green in your microphone already. Yes? Last one.
Hello. Do you hear me? Yes, thank you so much. My name is Eva Björk. I come from the Icelandic Association, Women's Association in Iceland. I'm really happy to be here. My question is concerning one of those platforms, this digital world that we live in now. It's also a platform for perpetrators, and what I have experienced is through my youngest daughter. She regularly goes among her friends, girlfriends, into one of those groups with people who violate children and girls, and to see if they are being targeted. Because every now and then, in this small country of ours, they find their names or their friends' names there, and they are being exploited, they're being targeted and talked about in the most horrific way. So my question is, why are we so hung up on protecting identification or protecting those violators? We are talking about protecting our children. Why are we not there? Why does this platform exist? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have a challenge in the panel because we have approximately 1 minute left. But you have at least 1 minute each. And then I'll start with you, Christian. And you don't need to take a minute. But Christian.
Thank you very much. Did I understand the gentleman in the back correctly that trans, quote-unquote, ideology, premarital sex, and so on, is harmful to adolescents? Okay, I do not recognize that premise, so I'm going to speak to the delegate from Glasgow. One of the things that we've seen work in Denmark as to that is to have NGOs, to have civil society keep on insisting, and basically do the police work for them, and do, like, one of the things we did, we had an organization, Digitalt Ansvar, Digital Responsibility, who would print out a one-pager as to what happens when we have digital harassment or digital sexual violence. And it was basic, it was practical. When it happens, take the victim into a separate room before you investigate them. Do not victim blame. Do not tell them that I shouldn't have put that on Instagram. That is your right. Like, do their work for them. It's kind of like cold starting a car. You might need to push it for the first 100 meters, but at some point it's hopefully going to run it by itself. Also, use María for that. Like, she is the expert in it, so use her. Thank you.
María, you asked for the floor as well. María?
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Let's speak later. I will tell you what we are doing in Iceland, because it's with this as with everything else. It's just about training. We have, everyone here, okay, not everyone, but a lot of people here come here on a plane. And we've been on a plane many times, but every single time we see the people telling us where the exits are, how you put the seatbelt on, because when it might happen, you will know what to do. And it's the same with violence against women. We have to train the ones that are going to respond, and we need to address violence against women online and offline as it's going to, when it's going to happen, not if.
No, you don't have any more time. So sorry. Kari?
There is no final answer to what is unacceptable or not. But threats, harassments, clearly are not acceptable. I think one key is to actually speak to the youth, have involved the youth in actually letting us know what is going on, what is leading to self-censorship, etc. The first step is also to take online violence seriously, make it a serious type of violence, and we're doing this by discussing it now. Then I also need to say that there's absolutely no proof at all that comprehensive sexuality education is promoting pornography. Actually, we have so much knowledge that says the opposite. It is promoting healthy sexuality, healthy adults.
Thank you. Iluta, I'm just looking at the rest of the panel. Is it okay with you? Iluta has a closing remark. Can you accept it? You can. Iluta.
I just wanted to say that we are here to build common understanding. We are here, we are discussing, we are coming to agreed conclusions. That's what I see also in my work, that regardless different things that we have in our environment, we don't have common understanding what violence is. And I really look forward to state-led leadership in breaking this abusive culture with clear laws and policies, and to break any profiting from abuse of women and girls, and sexual exploitation, prostitution, and pornography. And that's why we are here. We are building common understanding.
Thank you so much. And I honestly want to thank the whole panel for bringing us maybe a bit closer to knowing what must be done to ensure gender equality in the digital world and freedom from gender-based online abuse. I really hope you got inspired. Thank you so much to the panel. Give them a round of applause.